You're listening to Following On with me, Neil Manthorp, along with former England fast bowler Steve Harmison, as always. England have named their first Test squad of the summer with Essex bowler Sam Cook finally included. We'll discuss that and hear from selector Luke Wright. Somerset batter James Rew will join the show, fresh off his 10th first-class century, which saw Somerset recover from 78 for 5 to chase down 325 in the fourth innings to beat Essex at Taunton. Author and writer Rod Lyall will join us to discuss his new book, The Club, Empire, Power and the Governance of World Cricket. And we'll take a look at the ever-changing landscape of the game with Rod. And we'll round up the week's other big stories and bring you the final word. So plenty to come over the next hour. This is Following On. Tommy, plenty of topics and talking points. No great surprises, I suppose. Obviously, Sam Cook and Jordan Cox are the only uncapped players in England's 13-man squad. We've spoken a lot about Sam. We've had him on the show. 318 first-class wickets at under 20. About time he was given a crack. But because we've got so much to get through, I want you to talk about the obvious things and also answer this question. If Jacob Bethel wasn't in Bengaluru, would he be in the squad and in whose place?
Yes, he would be in the squad, and I think he'd be in the squad for Jordan Cox, which really, to be fair, doesn't change the landscape of any decision making because they still have to make a decision once they've made 13, getting them into 11, and who Jacob Bethel plays for if he comes back in. No surprises, you're right. Once Sam Cook was rested and it was let loose that from Essex that England had requested Sam to be rested, that he was going to be in this squad. John Turner, I've got him on I'll talk about him when it comes to Lancashire in a bit, because from a county point of view, there's quite a few fast bowlers bowling at this moment in time. He played with Saqib Mahmood and they didn't have a great return in their match. But the one that has had the best return so far from the fast bowler's point of view is Josh Tongue, and I think his second 5-4 was better than his first 5-4, which tells me that he's getting stronger in the summer as it's gone on. So I think he warranted his selection. I know Sonny Baker was pushing him hard. England have got a lot of bowlers missing. You think, from what I look at, you've got this 13. You look at players that could have been in that from a first choice. You would say, yes, you mentioned Manners, Jacob Bethel. You look at Chris Wokes, who's still not back yet. Jofra Archer's in the IPL. Brydon Carse, who I think is going to play in the game on the 16th for Durham. And then obviously Mark Wood, who is injured. They're probably the ones that would have been in England's thoughts for the selection for this India series. And I'm sure we'll be back in. But that 13, there was a lot of talk about having a look at players, new faces, possibly a younger squad. I don't think England can afford that. They need to win. And I know they've gone up to second in the world in the rankings, but this is a big summer. They have to set the tone. They have to get the ball rolling, and they have to treat Zimbabwe like they would treat, like any other international nation, but think, right, we're going to have to steamroller these and beat them in 3 or 4 days.
Okay, we've got a couple of clips of Luke Wright, England's chief selector. I think he's the chief selector. He was talking about, first of all, the selection of Sam Cook.
The thing I like about Cookie is he's not just a swing bowler as well. He swings and seams the ball, and actually a bigger lad than probably some people realise until you're sort of with him and up close. He gets bounce. He's obviously known for his accuracy, but you speak to any sort of opening batters, top order batters around the county cricket, especially, he's the one that everyone fears the most. But as I said, the bit I've been so impressed with him is every time there's a different challenge and you think things are going to be stacked against him, he manages to perform and still take wickets. So look, he's a highly skilled bowler. Yes, he's not up there at 85, 86, and that's fine, but what he has got is incredible skill. And as I said, that was a big reason for talking to him about going on that Lions trip. Was it, could he put a performance in out there again and just keep pushing his case? And that's exactly what he did. So look, he's a great lad, and I'm sure he's so excited about this opportunity.
From a selector point of view, we've often seen over the years the view of selection change, I guess, from looking at stats in county cricket to now clips on social media. So just how much did Sam's record in county cricket impact his selection, or was it more his performance with the England Lions over the winter?
No, I think everything, it all goes in, doesn't it? You know, whenever we're looking at it, of course, we look at the stats, but we also look at performances. You go and watch it live. You know, I've watched a hell of a lot of Sam. I've faced him before I retired, then obviously watched him a hell of a lot over the last few years. And then obviously giving him an opportunity in the line. So I think, as I said, it's been sort of 2 years really in the making to this point. And it's when those opportunities come up. And obviously with Wokes, he's still not quite ready as well. There was an opportunity for him to come in after a great winter, and I think you put it all in. It's obviously a combination of all those things you mentioned.
And also, one man that did well over the lines is Ben McKinney. There's been a lot of talk already on this call about Zach Crawley. So how much do you welcome Ben McKinney, the chat around him? And also, I appreciate he's only 20, but what does he need to do now to get future opportunities with the Test side?
Look, we're really excited by him. He's someone that, as I said, again, he did really well out in Australia. He's obviously come back and got 100 as well. And I thought the way he batted in that game was outstanding. So we're really excited by him, and he's just got to keep learning. We've got games coming up for the England Lions against India A that I'm sure he's going to get a lot of opportunity against to keep staking his claim. But look, what we want is as many people knocking on the door as possible. And if we can get to the place where Ben is knocking on that door, then that's fantastic. That keeps pushing all the players. But he's someone, as I said, we're really excited by, and he seems to be learning really quickly and getting better, which is great.
That's Luke Wright chatting to our very own Scott Taylor. Let's talk about Zach Crawley and Shoaib Bashir, shall we? Let's actually, before I don't know what you've got left to say on these two subjects. I mean, it's perplexing and mind-boggling, but let's hear what Luke Wright had to say about the continued backing of Zach Crawley.
Look, I think you've got to back people when they've shown enough. They've shown, you know, as I said earlier, the amount of runs he scored against top international teams. You know, he scored runs against India, he scored runs against Australia. And as I said, that partnership has worked so well with Ben Duckett and been a massive contribution to why we've done well in Test matches. They've got off to such great starts. And look, you know, we all know that opening the batting in international cricket is incredibly tough. It's there's not too many people that thrive all the way. You're always going to have dips in form, but I think, look, you want to be loyal to people that have performed well on that stage. And look, you know, he's as good as anyone on his day, and when he's playing well. And life's about looking at how well people play on their best days, and he can do that for sure. And look, I'm sure he's disappointed with his last 6 months, but that doesn't mean that he can't have a great summer. So for us, we wanted to back him in, and let's hope it works.
That's Luke Wright on Zach Crawley. Go on then, Harmy. Look, Crawley hasn't been, you know, bereft of runs. It's not quite like Shoaib Bashir, who's got 2 championship wickets at about 180 apiece. It is extraordinary. And people are always asking me the question. I have no idea what the answer is, so I'll leave it up to you.
Yeah, I'm running out of things to say, and that's hard for me. You know that, man. Isn't it? So, hey, look, I love that. You know, I've got a soft spot for Zach. I think he's a smashing young man. Personally, I think he's a wonderful, wonderful person. I think he's been very lucky that he's come around at the time. He's come around with the hierarchy in the situation it is, and that's not me. We are having a go at Zach, having a go at the hierarchy. I just think people's not face is fit as in, you know, he's a nice lad, we're going to pick him and stuff like that. They see something in him that they believe that our game plan is designed around this player doing this role and fulfilling the way the team game plan is, which from McCullum and Stokes and Key's point of view is we see him not getting us sort of big hundreds. He's there to set the tone. He's there to put the bowlers on the back foot from the very, very first ball. And yeah, he has done that a lot of times in his career, but he has obviously had a lot of troughs. He's had a lot of peaks, but he's had a lot of troughs. So far this season, he had 31 in the first game, 50 in the second game, 50 in the third game, 50 in the fourth game that he's played so far. So he has had starts. He has had a little bit of time in the middle. Is it a big summer? It's not. It's not. Zach Crawley will still be playing in Sydney no matter how good or bad he goes. We've just got to hope, and I really do hope that he does score runs, because you can second guess whether 2 bad games and is he out after what happened with Matt Henry? No, I don't think he's going anywhere. And this, I think, arguably the same with Bashir. If this is the first test, Manners, against India, I'm probably sitting here looking at that 13 and going, England can only pick 4 seamers. Can't pick Bashir. But because it's Zimbabwe, because the way Stokes looks after Bashir, and because at some point we're going to need ear spinner, if not 2, in the next 8 weeks, then I think Bashir has to play at Trent Bridge just to get him some over volume, potential confidence boost. Having the man who believes in him the most in Ben Stokes at mid-on and mid-off, because Shoaib is a completely different cricketer when he's got Ben next to him. So I think we have to pick Bashir. So with that, it's either Potts or Cook for me, who plays in that first test match. I mean, Atkinson, for what he did last year, has to play. Tongue, because of his pace, has to play, and it'll be a case of which of the steady eddies that Ben Stokes decides to go with. I think because we know so much about Matt Potts, and as much as, again, I've said on the County Cricket Show many, many times, if it's India first up, Matt Potts plays, because I know what Matt Potts is all about. But we have to have a look at Sam Cook. And I think the difficult one for me with Sam Cook is he is going to be judged very, very quickly whether he's good enough or not. And that sounds really cutthroat and ruthless. But I think when we talk about pace and we talk about what you need, the basics ingredients you need to perform at the top level against international attacks on international wickets, it's horrible, but it always happens. Quickly, you're judged whether you're quick enough, whether you can cause a problem to international players, or you're not. And I think over the course of 5 days at Trent Bridge, hopefully he does well and he goes well and he gets a few wickets and gets a chance to push himself for India. But unfortunately for Sam, he has to nail it straight away. His audition is bang on the money, because people will judge him whether he's got pace or he hasn't got pace. And that's, unfortunately for Sam, the cutthroat business of international cricket. So I hope he really does well. But for me, I pick Cook over Potts, because it's Zimbabwe, with Tongue, with Atkinson, with Bashir, and obviously with the captain, Ben.
You know what? I really feel sorry for Sam Cook, because I can see a scenario in which he takes 8 for 60 match figures against Zimbabwe and doesn't play another test match. And the other thing is,
agreed.
I mean, it's a horrible thought, horrible. Because if he does take 8 for 60, people will say, "Oh, it was only Zimbabwe," and I think he's on a real hiding to nothing. Just very, very quickly about Shoaib Bashir. I know that there were times in your career for England and Durham where you thought, I should be playing, and you weren't. Was there ever a time where you thought, I'm not sure I should be starting? Because I just wonder what, there's only so much Ben Stokes can do to pump up Shoaib Bashir's tyres. And Test cricket is different. I keep telling people, Test cricket's different to first-class cricket. But, he's got 2 at 180.
Absolutely. I'm not sure I was ready in Brisbane when the matches came around. I think I might have been standing walking out thinking, I'm not sure if I've got enough overs under my belt here, and it actually transpired that way. So yeah, but no, I think you have to believe that you are there on merit and you're there warranted at selection. Like I said many times before, sound like an old broken record as normal. Shoaib Bashir is a different bowler. He's got a different body language, and he seems to have a different mindset when Ben Stokes is alongside him. We've seen a little lull when Ollie Pope was captain, and that's nothing against Ollie. He's just not Ben. And I think the way Ben sets his fields, the way Ben talks to him as a person, talks to him as a bowler, I think he makes him feel invincible. He makes him feel 10 foot tall. So what Shoaib has to do is sort of transfer that to when Ben's not there, because, you can't have your hand held. I know he's just a young man, but you can't have your hand held all the time. And I think his numbers prove that.
Okay. Remind me to ask you in part 2 or maybe in part 4 about the news that Tim Southey might well be England's new bowling coach if Jimmy Anderson's committed to playing for Lancashire. Southey, of course, retired from New Zealand cricket in the 3rd test against England in Hamilton last year. So It'd be interesting to get your thoughts on that, but I've had the tap on the shoulder, so we're out of time. And a reminder before we do end this section that we'll be bringing you a daily podcast following on podcasts after each day's play in the upcoming test between England and Zimbabwe. You're listening to Following On with me, Neil Manthorp, along with former England fast bowler Steve Harmison. Next up, we'll be joined by Somerset batter James Rew, after his century helped Somerset beat Essex in a remarkable game and a comeback game at Taunton. You're listening to Following On here on talkSPORT 2 with me, Neil Manthorp, along with Double Ashes winner Steve Harmison. And a reminder, you can now watch the show on YouTube as well. Just head over to the talkSPORT Cricket YouTube channel and subscribe. Right, there were many standout performances and highlights of the last round of the Championship Games, but none more eye-catching than James Rew's remarkable century as Somerset chased down 325 to beat Essex by 3 wickets for their first championship win of the season. It was remarkable. James joins us now to reflect on that innings. You said that it was your best 100, your 10th and your best. Is that because you were 78 for 5 in the 4th innings, James?
Probably played a part in it, yeah. I mean, it was a difficult wicket. They bowled nicely the whole game, and we felt like it was going to be a challenge, especially being 5 down pretty early. But yeah, I mean, managed to build a couple of partnerships with Lewis Gregory and then Craig Overton, who both played incredibly. And yeah, just snuck over the line in the end.
It's another example of how the game's changed, the first-class game in particular. I mean, for centuries, players have been, I suppose, influenced by history. You know, it's just like you don't make the highest score of the match in the 4th innings. You don't chase 325 from 78 for 5. It just doesn't happen. But that's not the way the modern player thinks, is it? I mean, it is happening statistically more and more often.
Yeah, I guess so. And it helps at Taunton as well. The pitch just gets better and better as the game goes on. Obviously, I'm sure many people saw the photo of that pitch on day one, and it was so green. It looked like the outfield. But the heavy roller was obviously used a couple of times, and it kind of flattened out. The green tint when it started to become really good by the end of the game. So yeah, it was. We always thought that chase was possible. It obviously didn't help being 5 down early, but we felt we were kind of one big partnership away, and we managed to get that the night before on day 3, and then kind of went into day 4 with a sniff.
Somebody posted a photograph on the first morning before the start of the match of a group of Essex players on social media with the caption, "Essex players looking for pitch at Taunton." Did you see that?
I didn't, but that is fantastic.
You obviously will have, well, you might not be aware, but a lot's been written about the fact that you're the youngest player since Dennis Compton to score 10 hundreds. Does that sort of history flatter you? It's quite a name to be associated with.
Yeah, that's quite it's quite incredible, really. I never thought that would happen, you know, after scoring a couple a few years ago. It's it's incredible to think, really. I don't really know how to put it into words, but yeah, someone mentioned it a few weeks ago, because I got 100 the first game of this season, and they mentioned that, and I still kind of tried to ignore it because I didn't want to get too far ahead of myself. But yeah, it's quite cool that it's happened now, and yeah, quite an incredible name to be associated with.
You've been associated with higher honours for a long time, but you are still very young. You're not yet 22. Does talk of England, do you just ignore that? Do you just let that take care of itself? Is that something may happen in the future, or do you think about it?
No, I try and ignore it. To be honest, I don't feel like I'm close to the team at all. I look at the standard of players they've got in that dressing room, and I've played against a few of them already this season, and when I watch them bat, I just think they're a class above. So, I mean, I just try and go about my business for Somerset, and yeah, if something happens in the future, it happens. But at the moment, I just try and ignore everything that's said and keep playing how I play, and that's probably what's going to be best for the team at the moment.
How was the Lions with the winter with the Lions and working with Freddie Flintoff?
Yeah, absolutely incredible. I loved every second of it. Fred is such coach and such a great man, and so inspirational the way he talks about everything, the game, and you know how encouraging he is to everyone. I mean, it was just such a great experience, and yeah, great squad. We struggled a bit in Australia, but we played a great team over there, and yeah, they were too good for us. But I mean, it was a great experience, and I think I learned quite a lot personally.
Tell us about Archie Vaughan. How good might he be?
I think he's got so much potential. Um, Incredible with the bat, and obviously he's shown last year that he's got it with the ball as well. That would be nice if he could play a bit more of a role with the ball at some point this season. But no, his batting is high class, and I think it's obviously difficult to throw a 19-year-old in to open the batting. And in the county championship, it's obviously the hardest role, and I've got so much respect for everyone that opens the batting. It just is so difficult, and yeah, so he's obviously in a difficult place at the moment, being so young. But I'm sure he'll find a method. He's that good that I'm sure there's a future there, and he'll definitely do so well.
I'm going to talk more about you, but for now, let's stick to other people. Tell us about Tom Rew. Are you the best? Are you the best young batter in your family? How good could Tom be? He's at the Somerset Academy, isn't he? He's played for England under-19s.
Yeah, he probably is the best player in the family, to be honest. Based off recent form, he's done pretty well recently. Yeah, he's a keeper batsman as well. He's on the Somerset Academy. He's played quite a lot of twos cricket recently. Plays a lot for school and club. But yeah, he's still in the first year of his A levels, so he's got a lot ahead of him, and I'm sure it would be nice to play for Somerset with him one day if he ever makes it. But if he keeps going like he is, I'm sure he'll be close, because I think he's quite a good player.
And back to Somerset, is this a big turning point? I mean, it's your first win, but there's been some pretty good games that could have gone either way before this.
Yeah, I feel like we had some good opportunities. We got quite unlucky in a few matches. I felt like a few things didn't go our way. We got unlucky with conditions a few times. I felt like we did get outplayed by teams, but we were kind of showing glimpses of good form. Like we had periods of play where we did really well, and then suddenly one bad hour lets the opposition beat you. So yeah, I mean, we got quite down after losing to Surrey, being almost kind of bowled out in an hour, and we kind of had to take a step back, have a good regroup, and yeah, we had a bit of a think, and came back this week and showed a bit more fight and managed to get over the line.
James, congratulations. What lies ahead? How's the next month panning out?
So we've got two more championship games. We've got a week off this week, and then we play Sussex at home, and then Durham away, and then we start the T20s.
Harmy always says that the trip to Durham's worth at least 3 wickets for the home team. He reckons you travel from Taunton to Chester Street, you're as good as 3 down if you bat first.
We actually last year we went up 2 days before the game. So we had a night, then we trained, and then the next day we started the game. But it didn't seem to help too much. We lost in 2 days to Ben Stokes, really.
Yeah. Well, your 10th first class 100. It is staggering. As I said, not since Dennis Compton. He was a little less than a year younger than you when he reached his 10th first class 100. Are you a record keeper? Do you sort of think, gosh, I wonder how many I could score? Imagine if you played to your 36.
Yeah, I don't know really. I don't really want to think too far ahead. I mean, it seems to have happened all quite quickly. My first couple of years playing professional cricket. But yeah, I'm enjoying the journey, and seems to have gone quite well so far. So just going to try and keep enjoying it, and trying to be part of this Somerset team, and try and win games. You know, keep trying to creep up the table, and yeah, we've had a tough start to this season, but if we can keep putting in good performances and working hard as a team, we might get near the top of the table.
James, congratulations. Well played, and let's hope for more of the same.
Thank you very much.
Somerset batsman James Rew, who scored 116 in Somerset's 325 run chase against Essex. And for a full roundup of the week's County Championship action, make sure you download the latest episode of Following On County Cricketer. You're listening to Following On with me, Neil Manthorp, alongside former England fast bowler Steve Harmison. Next up, we'll be joined by the author Rod Lyall to discuss his new book, The Club, Empire, Power and the Governance of World Cricket. You're listening to Following On with me, Neil Manthorp, along with former England fast bowler Steve Harmison. And if you have missed any of the show or you wish to catch up, you can download the podcast from the Following On feed, available as always via the free talkSPORT app or wherever you get your podcasts. Right, now it's time to talk to journalist and author Rod Lyall, discussing his remarkable new book, The Club, Empire, Power and the Governance of World Cricket. Rod joins us. Are you in Perth or Melbourne, Rod?
I'm in Sydney.
Yeah, right. Okay. 1 out of 3. Rod, it is a remarkable piece of work, an incredible piece of history. And I think I will use it as a point of reference for many years to come. And I will read it more slowly and at my leisure, not necessarily at my pleasure, over many years. But I read it very, very quickly this weekend. And I have to say that I've got so many questions, but I think it'd be probably better if you set the agenda. All I would say is that I'm very grateful that I now finally understand some of the historical reasons for the mess international cricket finds itself in 2025.
Yeah, alas, that is so true. And I guess that was in a way the motivation for writing the book. I actually first wrote a short 3,000 word unofficial history of the ICC for the Cricket Europe website 15 years ago, in the middle of the great fight over the 10-team full member only World Cup. And I found myself asking exactly the same question. How did we come to be where we are? And then at the back end of COVID, Tim Brooks, who's also written very interestingly on international cricket, and I were chatting about the fact that there wasn't a book about the history of the ICC, and we decided to write it together. But then Tim decided also after that he had other priorities, and in his writing. And so I took the thing on myself. But it is exactly that. It is an attempt to come to terms with what is, I think, a repeatedly tragic history of mismanagement.
But Rod, has the ICC ever changed their mismanagement of governing cricket? In the book, there's a quote in there that says their strategy, so it's like advice given to airline passengers, hold your head in your hands and pray the crash won't be too horrific. That's been the story of the ICC. I don't think that's ever changed.
No, I think the forms of it have changed. It starts as an imperialist project to bring the white empire together. And it maintains that position for the best part of 80 years. And we've seen then this extraordinary reversal where, as it has become more professional and as more money has come into the game, the incompetence of, maybe not just incompetence, but also the willful mismanagement of Australia and England, and in the early days, South Africa, has been replaced by the, I think, even more malevolent role of the BCCI and its allies. with England and Australia still managing to keep their hands on the tiller and on some of the money. It's changed in form, but the underlying story of just terrible governance has essentially remained the same.
Yeah, exactly. There are so many examples of this wretched, self-serving governance. I mean, at one point, Rod, you write, it remains an open secret that the annual returns of player and official number competitions, clubs, and facilities which the associate members are required to submit are often hyperbolic and in some cases closer to fiction than reality. It is effectively a form of fraud. So that's at the lower levels. And we talk often about how the associate nations are struggling. And you say that they've got their hand in the cookie jar anyway. And then we fast forward to the Wolf Report in 2011, independent review of the governance of international cricket. I mean, somebody from the Wolf Report spoke to me, believe it or not. And I was full of hope that the game might actually change. It was full of wonderful recommendations, and I really thought that somebody might listen. It turns out they all did listen and ran for the hills. A couple of years later, we had the breakaway of the big three, India, Australia, and England, saying that everybody should look after themselves and be able to be financially independent. Like, as Harmy said, you just want to hold your head in your hands.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the comment about the chicanery involved in the annual returns, I think needs to be contextualized. That's true. But it's also true that the full members are not subject to any managerial, actuarial, financial control whatsoever. They can do what they like with the money that the ICC gives. So, yeah, I mean, I think that is undoubtedly true. Gideon Hay, in his review of the book, talks about the Wolf exercise as a Hail Mary. Even at the time, he says he thought it was a Hail Mary. It seemed like a Hail Mary because it was obvious that this wasn't going to go anywhere. If it came up with any recommendations which were halfway sensible, they would immediately be vetoed by the people with the power. And of course, that's what happened. And that is one of those tragic moments where cricket was at a crossroads and it chose the wrong path. And it's gone on choosing that path and getting further and further down that path in the what, 12, 13 years since.
Rod, having studied the history, I mean, I know that, you know, history, as we understand it, is a study and an understanding of the past, but it's also gives you a very rare ability to look at the future, given that history has repeated itself so often in cricket. I want you to look into the future and tell us if there's any hope. I mean, the T20 franchise market world is out of control, isn't it?
Yeah, and if you look at the last chapter of the book, it's a pretty bleak read, I have to say. I hold up my hand and admit that. But on the other hand, I mean, in an interesting piece of synchronicity, just a few days before the book was published in England, the World Cricketers Association issued their report on the future of cricket. And while I have a lot of reservations about it, and I wouldn't describe it as Wolf 2.0, at the same time, it contains a lot of sense, and it contains a lot of the same criticisms. Some different solutions, but on the financial side, they are in no doubt that the the current regime, where the lion's share of the money goes to the BCCI on the grounds that they bring it in and therefore they ought to get it back, and no attention is paid to the actual needs of world cricket. Let's be honest, the money that the associates are perhaps in some cases fighting over is peanuts. It's crumbs from the rich man's table. And the other full members are being shafted just as much as the associates are, or nearly as much. So no attention is paid to what cricket actually needs, what the development of cricket actually needs in terms of the distribution of money. And then on top of all of that, you have, as you say, the franchise, which represent, it seems to me, a huge threat to traditional international cricket. Does that matter? Would anybody care if the number of countries playing Test cricket, as the new CEO of Cricket Australia recently suggested, were to be cut to who knows what, 4, 6 countries? You know, that some people's minds are working in that direction. Let's have more franchise cricket and less of the old fuddy-duddy Test cricket, which I happen to think is the highest form of the game. So, yeah, I mean, the players have an interest in encouraging the growth of franchise leagues because that's where the money is. And so the World Cricketers Association report wants to reduce the number wants to have windows for international cricket, but as few of them as possible and as short as possible, with the rest of the time open to what they call the free market. And of course, one of the problems that we've had for at least 20 years and maybe more is that cricket administrators no longer think in terms of cricket. They think in terms of markets. The whole IS Bindra China USA thing, which I talk about in the book, is aimed not at growing cricket in China or possibly even in the USA, which tends to be a basket case anyway, but to grow the viewing numbers, the following numbers, and thereby the amount of money that can be generated from media contracts. That's all that matters. And that is not an attitude which is characteristic of a governing body worthy of the name.
You can buy Rod's new book, The Club, Empire, Power and Governance of World Cricket, out now in all good bookstores. You're listening to Following On here on talkSPORT 2 with me, Neil Manthorp, alongside Durham Hall of Famer Steve Harmison. Next up, we'll continue our chat with Rod in Sydney and discuss the future of the game in a franchise-led market. And, of course, we'll bring you the final word. You're listening to Following On with me, Neil Manthorp, alongside the former #1 bowler in the world, Steve Harmison. We're continuing our chat with Rod Lyall, author of The Club, Empire, Power and the Governance of World Cricket, which is, to put in simple terms, an explainer of the history behind many of the problems that the game finds itself in at the moment and why it isn't able to administer and control itself in the way that football can, Rod. FIFA, I mean, it all goes back to the history and the establishment of the International Cricket Conference, as it was back in the, when was it? 1930?
1908, 1909. Yeah, I mean, I think that is a really interesting contrast, not only with FIFA, but also with the IOC, with international organizations in which the French played an instrumental role. And I think one of the problems, although the only other time that cricket has been in the Olympics was in the Paris Olympics of 1900. But the fact is that cricket was not taken seriously in France in the early 1900s. And as we said earlier, the initiative to create the Imperial Cricket Conference was a project which originated in South Africa with a Bailey, who was a mining magnate, who had the bright idea that we could use cricket to bind together the empire. And by the empire, he meant the white empire. So it was Australia, England, and South Africa. And his project was essentially a triangular tournament, which happened once in 1912 and was, to put it mildly, not a huge success, and had taken place kind of over the dead bodies of the Australian cricket administrators who didn't want to be involved in it in the first place. And the idea was clearly, from the evidence, to keep the ICC as powerless as possible. It was to be concerned with arranging future tours among those three countries, which were the only countries who were allowed to play Test cricket at that point. And significantly, it met twice every English summer to allow time for the delegates to refer back to their boards to check to see whether what they were agreeing to was what the board was prepared to agree to. And that's a practice which keeps going for quite a long time, that the ICC has no real decision-making power. They start gradually to involve themselves in umpiring, and surprisingly early in questions of corruption, in this case, corruption of umpires, and other broader issues, but always in the context of, we can only decide this once our board has given us the green light. And the boards developed very clever techniques of saying, well, we haven't had time, even though you put this question to us 3 years ago, we haven't had time to discuss it yet. But we'll let you know. Don't call us, we'll call you. So the ICC has had in that form minimal contact, minimal decision-making power. And that continues really up to the big reconstruction, which takes place at the end of the 1980s, and in some ways even beyond that. So you get journalists commenting on the fact that, and some administrators commenting on the fact that the ICC never makes a decision, or never makes a decision until it really has to. And if you look, for example, at Bodyline, the way the ICC managed to not make a decision about anything to do with Bodyline. Of course, one of the problems was that the MCC, the Marylebone Cricket Club, was running the ICC from a desk at Lords, and they were one of the parties to the Bodyline dispute. So they had an interest in making sure that Australia and South Africa didn't get a chance to say, you've been very naughty boys. But that's kind of the history in miniature. That's how it goes. And if you compare policies on membership, for example, or indeed on decision-making powers, or on finance, yes, FIFA, the IOC, which are defective bodies in many ways. And at one point in the book, I talk about World Rugby, which is another interesting example. Again, France, being a major rugby nation, has a voice in that. And when you look at they are not perfect organizations, but they're a hell of a lot better than the mess that passes for the governance of world cricket.
Yeah, it's interesting that ICC, you say, started making decisions. I don't think they've started yet. So, they've been going for 120 odd years. There's time for them. So hopefully they will do in the future, because I think the landscape is quite frightening in the game from a governance point of view. You mentioned South Africa, Rod, just a second ago, and talking about World Cups. There's a sliding doors moment, around apartheid. Would World Cups have come about if that aren't happening? And then even fast forwarding it to sort of modern day when you talk about, South Africa's sliding door moment. I think in 2007, India and Pakistan were knocked out. The decision not to have associate nations involved in World Cups then as well.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, apartheid was a huge test, and I think we are still suffering in many ways for the line that Australia and England and New Zealand took over playing South Africa after South Africa left the Commonwealth. The rules of the ICC said that in order to be a member of the ICC and in order to play Test cricket, you had to be a member of the Commonwealth. And when South Africa became a republic and left the Commonwealth in 1961, that technically meant that they could no longer play Test cricket. And England and Australia and New Zealand said, we don't care about that. We're going to play them, and we're going to regard them as full tests. And then you get the rebel tours, you get prolonged negotiations with South Africa, trying to get them back in. The ICC sends a delegation to review progress towards multiracial cricket in South Africa. And whatever view you take, and it is a very, very complex issue, whatever view you take on the rights and wrongs of using cricket in the battle for change in South Africa, and I know there are honestly held opinions on all sides about that, but the fact is that the resentment which England, Australia, and New Zealand built up in the ICC with the West Indies and India and Pakistan, as the six then were, are, I think, still echoing in the attitude of many people in cricket administration around the world. There are people who have still not forgiven the white countries for the line they took over South Africa, and that may fuel some of the determination to exact a post-colonial revenge from the BCCI and its allies.
Rod, I've had a small taste a couple of times of the dedication it requires to write a book, although I have never tackled anything as vast as this. Congratulations! It's an extraordinary read, and as I said,
Thank you very much, Neil.
It answers a lot of questions that I've had for many decades. Congratulations!
Thank you very much indeed. It was in a funny kind of way. It was fun writing it. And I just wish that final chapter weren't so necessary.
That's Rod Lyall, author of The Club, Empire, Power and the Governance of World Cricket. Absolutely fascinating read. Harmy, we need to crack on. Final word now. And I've got three for you. The first is all yours. I just love Graham Clark, always have done. I mean, he's one of those cricketers. I used to wonder what he was. Is he a white ball opener? Is he a middle? He's, and again, probably a victim of his own willingness to be whatever anybody wanted him to be. But in the last round of championship match against Hampshire, he wasn't due to play, was he?
No.
He wasn't supposed to play. Ben McKinney had a back spasm. He went in at 6 and scored 160. And he's 30 years old now, isn't he?
He is. He's a great kid. I mean, last year, not winter gone, the winter before, he was taking his coaching qualifications. He was coaching Northumberland's under 16 EPP stuff because he was looking obviously at a future career path for him. I seen him most Tuesday nights. He is a lovely kid from a great family. Him and his brother have done brilliantly for their careers. And Ryan Campbell came and saved him in such a way where he didn't really get a chance in the James Franklin. Ryan Campbell, seen the aggressive manner that Graham was, the shot making down the ground, very, very, very strong down the ground. And I think Ben McKinney, I think what I heard was Ben McKinney had a back spasm. I think he's picking his bag up out of the lift, and he's a big lad. So, there's a lot to go wrong. And bang, he got a back spasm. So Emilio Gay went up to open the baton, and Graham went in and got 160. And you know what? typical Graham Clark style. He played the first game of the season, second top score. He knew he wasn't going to be playing in the second game and the third game because Durham had other players coming back, i.e. overseas and everything like that. So, and knowing Graham as I do, he just took it on the chin and gone, right, whatever's best for the team. He's gone down to Hampshire as one of 15, knowing that he wasn't going to play. And then on the morning of the game, he gets told he's playing, he goes and bangs out 160. I'd like to think if they dropped him for this, I'd be kicking Ryan Campbell's door down if I was Graham Clark. Hopefully he's not that sort of lad, but I'm pleased for him. I'm really am pleased for him because he's a wonderful, wonderful young man.
And a couple more. Tom Bailey, did you see the footage of him turning for a second run and his mobile phone drops out of his trouser pocket?
It was brilliant. I thought it was hilarious. It reminded me a few years ago where my son was 12 years old, went to play in the village league for a club that I used to play for. And to cut a long story short, there was a farmer who was playing in the same game on the opposition side, who walked out to bat with his gloves in his hand, his fag in his hand and his bat alongside him. And as he walked out to bat, you could see that he had no idea how he was going to play cricket at all. They just drafted him in from the pub. And all of a sudden, we're sitting on the side of the field and my wife's going, Stephen, what on earth is that noise? And he ran a 3 and all you could hear was a change in his pocket, just sort of rattling in his pocket, the change that he had been, obviously come straight out of wherever he had been. Somebody, he'd give him a £5 for a pint. He's got the rest of it in change. He's left it in his pocket and he got bowled first ball by the time he got on strike. That happens in village cricket. A mobile phone dropping out your pocket in first-class cricket, I tell you what, unless you're looking at the horse racing results back in the day, that's one monumental mistake. So, yeah, it's funny, it's hilarious, but, yeah, I mean, don't judge him on it.
Anti-corruption rules apply to county cricket as well as international cricket, don't they? And you're not supposed to have a phone at the ground.
No, you're not. No, you're not. No, the fun police, I'm sure, will be right at, and I call them with all due respect to the ICC. I know we've had Rod talking about the ICC, and I give the ICC some stick, but on a serious element, I'm sure there'll be question marks why Tom Bailey has his phone in his pocket, because normally in test matches, as you walk into the dressing room, your mobile phone goes into a box and it gets locked and secured, so you cannot access it from basically the minute you walk through the threshold of reception to walking back through the threshold of reception at the end of the day. So I would imagine we're having a laugh about it, and it's funny, it's hilarious, but unfortunately for Tom, I think it might be a bit more serious than that.
Hopefully there's an innocent explanation. Right, finally, news that the UAE women have been given ODI status, and they will replace the serially maladministered USA cricket for the 2025 to 2029 cycle. You've been listening to Following On talkSPORT 2 with me, Neil Manthorp, along with former England fast bowler Steve Harmison. We'll be back at the same time next week to continue building up to England's test against Zimbabwe. And we'll hear exclusively from England legend Jimmy Anderson. But for now, this has been another edition of Following On.